Are we going live yet?
Yeah, we're definitely live. So as I've been listening to a lot of classic rock lately. I don't know why. I
What
clean.
do you call classic rock? The Metallica?
No, no. Like I know that's what classic rock is by today's standards, but to me, classic rock's always going to be like 70s, 60s, some 50s, but like there was a lot of Pink Floyd in there. There was a lot of Van Morrison, and it was just interesting to me, like how awesome these guys were when it came to.
If you're gonna listen to classic rock, you gotta listen to prog rock greats. Yes, and King Crimson,
I've
along with Pink Floyd, but you got to throw those in there.
no Van Morrison. He's got some pretty
That's,
psychedelic
I
shit in
mean,
there, dude.
that's classic rock. But I wouldn't call them prog rock.
Well, I was just talking about rock in regards to like drug use. Seeing how that's going to be the topic for the day. And by the way, for you guys tuning into the show, um, I'm Jake,
On Drake,
and this is Jake and Drake show. The hell's up with your shirt and your camera? You
I
got the camera and the
finally got my
shirt now.
camera working.
Yeah.
It's a shirt from Black Guns Matter, which is an organization Maj Tour founded, what, 2016, and it's basically they do firearms training and bring firearms education instead of like screaming about gun violence. Oh, we need to take away our guns. They instead approach it from like we need to teach people about firearm safety and guns and stuff. So we're the organization to look up and donate to.
Uh, where do I get a T-shirt like that?
Do you have company or
Yeah,
a
that.
ghost?
Yeah, I think that dog came back up here. I think he knows where the cool kids hang out. So
And the two cats?
yeah, it's, but can I get a T-shirt like that? It's a pretty cool T-shirt.
Yeah, they've got their little shop, and the proceeds go to help them tour the country and teach people how to shoot,
All right,
teach
well
people gun safety.
we'll drop a link for that in the description of the video if anybody wants to support the cause. Pick up a pretty cool T-shirt. So yeah, I'm listening to all this what I call classic rock, and I am just realizing like
Pretty
how
hippie.
I'm not hippie, but like dude, like I grew up listening to classic rock, a lot of classic general stuff, dude, like classic Motown, but mostly classic rock, and so I'm just amazed at like how well the music is combined. I mean, you listen to rock today, it's a little different, and that's being generous, but the amount of I mean to me like the fact that these guys are just using drugs and like the product of the drugs is just really awesome music. It got me to thinking like too much something anything good can be bad, and maybe there is a especially with a lot of states legalizing weed, or at least for medicinal uses, like maybe we should take a second look at drugs in general. I don't know, what do you think about at least the genre of music and substance use?
Well, to quote the late great Bill Hicks, if you don't think drugs have done good things for us, then take all your records, tapes, and CDs and burn them. Drugs are a tool, and I think that the overblown um, reaction, the war on drugs, does more harm than actual preventative good.
Oh, what do you
You know,
mean by
it
that?
well, it makes the black market more lucrative.
Mm.
So because the black market's more lucrative, that encourages uh, and even induces violence. Um, if there's no market for it, or not a big market for it like that, then they wouldn't put so many resources into producing and selling illegal drugs. So instead, why not legalize it? Or actually, I take that back, not legalize it, but decriminalize it and move forward.
Well, what's the difference between legalizing it and decriminalizing it?
The amount of government meddling. So,
Mm.
I mean, when you legalize something, you have this whole list of laws and things you've got to deal with and
Mm-hmm.
uh, whatnot. When you decriminalize it, you say this is no longer a crime. So,
So you basically, if you legalize something like say alcohol, like when alcohol was legalized, there's just a bunch of still some regulation tied to it. But if you just decriminalize it, essentially you're saying that drugs are like water or like anything
Pretty much.
else.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's like growing a fucking plant in your garden,
Hmm.
or type of thing. As far as marijuana is concerned, or even some of the other like coca leaves or poppies, the opium from poppy seeds or whatever. Um, you're growing a plant. So
Which I find it. I
I mean,
find it. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I mean, even some of the stuff that's not. I don't know. I don't know if it's actually if they scheduled it, but like the kratom, which people have been using to kick opioid addictions. Uh, things like salvia, which has been used in uh, indigenous Native American ritual,
Mm.
things like that for many, many years. Peyote.
Mm.
So I mean, there's a wide variety of just these naturally occurring drugs. I mean, even LSD to a lesser extent is naturally occurring. In what the argot or the mold or fungus.
Hmm. No, it's. So what about the stuff that's not naturally occurring? What about like steroids, or what about methamphetamines and amphetamines? What about things that are like created in a laboratory? What's your take on those?
It really depends. I don't. I think man-made chemicals, things like that. I don't want to argue and say the government should regulate them because government has no business meddling in anything. But I think there's an argument, at least for those, that it's there's less of an argument to just flat across the board decriminalize that and say that it's fine.
Mm.
But if you have if you take coca leaves and you refine cocaine out of it, I don't think that should be a problem.
Because it
Or
was
if
naturally occurring. It just
right,
required a tree.
or bush or something. I'm not honestly. I don't know. I've not my cup of tea. So
And I'm not even playing devil's advocate. I need a little bit more clarification. So if we're talking about we're talking about meth, like you essentially you have to create that, and in when we're talking about creating cocaine, or we're talking about refining marijuana or something like that, it's fairly harmless, the process. But if you're talking about like a drug like meth, which has shown to create a lot of toxic vapors, in some cases fires, like what's your take on something like that, where actually creating that drug creates a potential like hazard for other people, you know?
it's I don't I don't think the government should be regulating anything anybody does. If somebody wants to make that and use it, I mean, and chemical companies do that, or pharmaceutical companies do that. They make it and they sell it. They slap a brand name on it and
Mm-hmm.
charge your insurance company. You know, I don't know however much they charge the insurance companies, but amphetamine on over the counter, or not over the counter, but by prescription, things like that. It's still for sale. So if somebody wants to manufacture their own, I don't necessarily see a problem with that. The problem I see is when they do things that are unsafe, and if they're doing it in their trailer park and the trailer blows up and it takes out their next door neighbors,
Mm.
or whatever.
What about like what about established drugs? What about like tobacco and alcohol? What's your take on those? I know how you feel about the ATF, but like, do you think there should be any kind of regulation when it comes to tobacco, or any regulation when it comes to ethanol?
The whole tobacco industry is a racket as well. They were a lot of the ones behind the big vaping studies that said, "Oh my God, vaping is worse for you than smoking because whatever." But they use these really narrowed um, trials and things like that where you're pumping in 100 times the amount of chemicals into like a fucking little mouse than someone would get
Mm.
vaping all day.
Mm.
So if you look at the oh, what's the British organization? The I don't know, it's one of the British health organizations. They did a study and said no. I mean, obviously still putting a poison. Nicotine is still a poison. You're still putting it in your body, but it is far less harmful for you than smoking a cigarette.
Mm.
So, and I think a big part of the fear came up when what was it, 2019, when people were getting this weird disease, pneumonia-like disease from vaping, but it wasn't from the vaping itself. They were using those bootleg
Yeah,
marijuana ones
yeah.
that had vitamin E oil, and it was traced down exactly to vitamin E. But they don't talk about that. They just run, oh, vaping will do this to you, not just vaping bootleg marijuana uh, cartridges with vitamin E oil in them will do that to you. So, I
So
mean,
in
it's
that
still a new.
sense, though, like because you bring up a good point is we're talking about bootleg shit. So I do feel like I personally feel like if we're going to decriminalize or we're going to like legalize something, whichever you want it, like there has to be some kind of regulation on it because if I could just grow whatever drug or I could create whatever drug and then I push it out and it ends up being like poison, you know what I mean? Like that. Well,
Well,
okay,
you'd still be responsible for that. And if you know, did something like that and killed somebody or sent them to the hospital, then you would be liable for it.
no, you would, but like as a consumer, as someone that's looking for that product, you should be able to. There should be some kind of and the problem is right. The problem is a the government sucks at shit, and b it's just going to make the shit cost more because you have to hire a group of people. But like you
Well,
know,
and that's part of what I was trying to get at with the whole vaping thing. The tobacco industry is putting all this money into these things. Oh, well, to make vaping safe, you've got to go through all these rigorous trials and things like that. So all the small vape companies are shut down because they can't afford to spend $1 million per flavor to get approved by whatever was the FDA or something like that. Get FDA approval per
hmm
flavor, but the big tobacco companies can.
obviously,
And in fact, what Philip Morris I think owns Juul, which was one of the ones that took off really, really big, and they were going through pushing a lot of this stuff, saying, "Yes, oh, we're so sorry. This is a terrible epidemic with our youth. They shouldn't be doing this. We need more regulations and more hurdles and more expenses for the small vape companies to have to go through
mm.
to try to compete with us." Why? Because their product is garbage and they don't want competition. They just want to make it harder. So I don't think regulation is the issue. I think deregulation. If it wasn't illegal, that you wouldn't have the bootlegging. You wouldn't have people taking the stuff and cutting it like that with the vitamin E oil or whatever to make it or to like double their quantity. It's like you see on TV or in the movies, they get the pure cocaine shipment and then they take it and they cut it with something else,
hmm
and so they're cutting it down, dropping the purity, but they're doubling the amount they have. So they
the profit
have
margin is there. Yeah.
exactly. So if they deregulate and make it not profitable for bootlegging, and if you grow it and do it and whatever, I think we're going to see a lot of that going away.
I'm picking up some of what you're putting down, but I don't know what the answer is, but I do feel like, when anything that you buy for consumption, it's a little different when you're talking about like a durable good, like something that you're not putting into your body, like obviously there's no regulatory guidance on buying like furniture or buying a refrigerator or something, but when you're talking about, when you're talking about meat, when you're talking about water, when you're talking about milk, like as much as it sucks is like there is some kind of regulation behind it to make sure that the milk is homogenized, to make sure. So I can see how like if you decriminalized it, like you incentivize smaller people to start up cocoa trees
Well,
and
let's talk about that for a second though.
okay.
You're using the milk example. If my neighbor has a cow and I
hmm
want to buy a gallon of fresh milk,
hmm
I can't legally because it's got to go through some special FDA process, blah blah blah. And
hmm
I just want some fresh fucking milk, cow titty, fresh squeezed milk,
Right.
and be done with it. But
hmm
and that's what I'm talking about. You can't, the way the government is, or the laws are, you can't do any of that because it's just a matter of They
I
want their cut. They want their share of the money.
There is some safety behind it though. I mean, I'm sure like if we were to put it on a pie chart, like maybe safety's like 20% of that, and then the other, you know, maybe another 25% is just to like disenfranchise people from starting up their own, business, whichever it may be. But I do feel like an important part of it is like is a safety aspect. Like, if I remember watching, because we're talking about cow titties right now. I remember watching a video where Amish people were getting arrested because they were selling milk in I don't know if it was Ohio or Pennsylvania, but they were selling milk and they were doing sting operations on these guys because the milk that they were selling wasn't homogenized. In homogenization, basically you heat up the milk to kill the bacteria, and essentially that makes the milk a lot safer to drink than fresh titty milk, But
What if I don't want my milk homogenized? What if I want fresh titty milk?
well, you're
It should be my right to
no,
buy that from my neighbor
no,
without
no,
the
no, no.
government interfering.
I think the way they look at it is if you want that, you're more than welcome to get your own cow and drink your own milk. But when it comes to selling it, it has to be. I think that's what it is. Is like, it's like if I decide I want to make alcohol in my house, I am well within my rights to brew my own beer, distill my own liquor. It's that when I
Up to a
start
certain amount.
when I start selling it, that's where it has to be regulated. You know what I mean? So I was,
You're allowed to up to a certain amount for
mhm,
yourself.
yeah.
Why? Because they want their revenue. They want you to be a good consumer. Go out, buy it from the store, pay the taxes. They get their money.
Mm. And I'm not disagreeing with you there. I'm just saying I do like if I were to start up a weed company, within the next couple months, um, if I'm selling my weed, how do I gain the confidence of the consumer? Because also consumers do look for that, FDA approval, or some of them do, or
For weed.
well, I mean, weed is a terrible example, but it's easy business to get into. Like obviously, like making meth or making cocaine is gonna be a lot longer. It's gonna be a more tedious process. But I mean, I'm behind you. I think we should legalize it. I guess the next question would be like the abuse factor. So we turn around, we legalize all these drugs or decriminalize them, as you say. So whichever route we take, initially you have everything on the fucking table. What is the potential for abuse by the consumer?
I mean, people abuse caffeine. People abuse alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
Those are legal. Um, who fucking cares? You know. Along with that, I think with decriminalization, I think they need to if they did a widespread across the board decriminalization, they need to do something where it's like you're responsible for yourself. Don't if you overdose on heroin, that's on you.
So, do you feel like, I mean, honestly, do you feel like if we did legalize things, do you feel like maybe um the healthcare system might take a hit? I mean, I don't mean take a hit like the emergency rooms would be full, but like obviously if you had people that needed emergency services and all of a sudden you legalize a lot of drugs all, or decriminalize all at once, do you feel like, a good portion of those beds would be taken up by people, trying out drugs, abusing drugs, what have you?
Like alcohol.
Yeah, but alcohol.
It's gonna be more like drunk tanks um, versus uh, oxycontin overdoses.
Mm, yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. I feel my libertarian side, I had this thought process like many years ago. I used to be, what do you call that, not apathetic, but I used to be a pragmatic when it came to thinking like this. And it's like, well, like who am I to stop, so and so? Who am I to stop Darian from doing something? Who am I to stop? If they're going to do it, they should do it. And the two things that I thought to counter that argument in my head was one, um, the healthcare system, because I think there's a majority of Americans out there. I don't know, But I feel like a majority of Americans out there will not partake in something out of the sheer legality. And all of a sudden, Molly's legal, meth is legal, heroin's legal, cocaine is, and I feel like that would be enough to get a lot more people to try it because it's decriminalized, it's legalized, and essentially, if we legalized it, I guess we could put limits on it, like kind of like when you go and get a beer at this point, like alcohol is after almost 2 centuries of existence in this country, with government intervention, it's to the point where like we have classes on it, right? So you go out to the bar and you understand that it's going to take your liver about an hour to process a drink on average, and the legal limit in your state is whatever, and that's just many 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 years of science. That's many many years of research. Whereas we
And it
don't.
also comes down, but it comes down to personal responsibility. If you go to that bar after work, you're going to have to drive home.
Mhm.
So if you have one drink and you're going to hang out for an hour, but you only have the one drink, you'll be fine. But if you go there, you know, run into your buddies and somebody's birthday and people are buying shots all around and you do 3 or 4 shots, an hour later, oh shit, I got to get home, and you go to get in your car. That's the problem. It's the personal responsibility. So instead of putting the burden of that on somebody else, saying you're only allowed to sell X amount of alcohol with X amount or X percent,
Mhm.
proof or whatever. That's the kind of stuff. I mean, why can't you sell the beers that have the stronger European beers that are way better than the American piss water we get?
I was
Because
No, I see what you're saying. That I guess what I was saying is like there's not really like you couldn't tell me because the way it works is it's like you have one 12-ounce 3.5 beverage, or you have one glass of 6.5 7% wine, or you have one shot of 80 proof, right? And that's a standard drink. So what I'm talking about, like if we talk about a standard joint, like because obviously, if you smoke weed and you get behind a wheel, you're impaired. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. But how do you tell somebody what one joint is? Like there's no proof system to weed or cocaine or something like that, to where like a consumer could know. All right, well, if I do this drug like marijuana, if I smoke. If this joint is rated for what, I don't even know if they even rate marijuana, but like, could you see what I'm saying? Is like there'd have to be some kind of regulatory guidance to let people know how much of a particular drug will make them impaired. Because the most that you see is like when you get the
if you
painkillers.
smoke weed, you're impaired.
Period.
Don't drive.
Period.
Just yeah, don't drive.
Hmm. So
I
it's
mean,
not.
there are people who do that anyway. Just
Mm,
like there are people who drunk drive
mm,
anyway. They're completely sloshed. They know they're sloshed, but they drive anyway.
mm.
Oh, I can drive fine. It's just it's only a mile.
Yeah. Yeah, I see what
And
you're
I'll
saying.
admit, in my youth, I've done that myself, and it was fucking stupid.
Mm.
Fortunately, I've been really lucky, but
Some people
yeah,
aren't. Yeah.
it's one of the reasons I just don't drink often anymore.
Mm. Well, let's talk about like some of the good contributions. Like, so obviously we're talking about like the regulatory part, the government part, and I agree. Like, I don't want the government really meddling in it, but I can see like how obviously there could be more tax revenue, which depending on which state you live in, could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. What about what about the good? What about the recreational aspect of it? Like, what do you think?
Why not? I mean, if you're gonna drink, what's wrong with smoking pot as a recreational thing?
Hmm.
You don't hear about people, you know, smoking weed and going out and getting in brawls and stuff like that. They get drunk and then you have a bar fight, or you know, it is, man.
Yeah. And then some of the other heavier drugs like heroin or meth. And can you? Is it possible to use something like that recreationally? Is that even a thing?
Yeah, I'm sure it's possible. I mean, people use amphetamines regularly. They're prescribed to you,
Mm-hmm.
and you know they take them every single day, and that's what it is.
Yeah, it's a little. That's a little different though, right? Like when you're talking about those meths, I mean, there is some. Those are actually made in a laboratory with some kind of purity and some kind of control, though, right? Like some kind of dosage, like per tablet or something, right?
So if you go out and buy the good pure amphetamines from the good drug dealer, then you know
So it is possible to use them recreationally, is what you're getting at.
I think so. I mean, everything in moderation. It's just like alcohol. If I want, if I can drink alcohol recreationally, or I can become a sloppy drunk. Um, it's just how people use it. If you're gonna do it, well, everything in moderation. It's kind of what it comes down to. But you've gotta take that's the thing. You got to take personal responsibility. I shouldn't have somebody saying, "Oh, you're only allowed to have one drink." Um, and that's it,
Hmm.
or all you're allowed to have, or you're allowed to have one joint, and that's all you're allowed to have, and then a week, or fuck that. Let people be responsible for themselves. If they fuck up, they fuck up. If they hurt somebody else in the process, then we look at the punishment side of crime and punishment. But don't make the plant a crime.
Hmm.
People can smoke weed and be just fine.
No, I agree.
Fucking look at Elon Musk. Look at Joe Rogan. They're doing just fine. They smoke weed. Who cares?
Yeah, I honestly like. I don't have a problem with marijuana use. Like I am, I kind of look at marijuana exactly like alcohol. I feel like it's one of those. It's a drug that you just use responsibly. I don't think that people don't OD on marijuana. You just smoke till you pretty much pass out, right? And
Well, there is a top of like edibles where you have these high concentrations,
sure.
stuff like that, or they put it in the gummy bears so kids might eat them and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Well, don't be a dumbass, you know?
Well, your kid could get on your liquor cabinet or something,
Exactly.
but
Believe me, I know about sneaking booze.
my concern is for the other drugs like I this is what I think. I think weed should be legalized across the board, and I say that for the fact that it should just be treated like alcohol in the sense of you don't use machinery when doing it. Period. Right. And I feel
What
like
do you do
it's
for alcohol?
do I use machinery with no that's what I'm saying in the same aspect like if you get behind a vehicle and you're legally
Oh,
drunk,
okay.
that's what I'm saying don't use machinery at all like and now when it comes to the other drugs I am a little bit skeptical because I do think something we haven't talked about is like you said so actually two questions so you said well I asked you what do you think would happen and you said there it wouldn't be lucrative, right? So it wouldn't be lucrative because there's no black market there to you know you're looking at a black
It'd be
market.
less lucrative.
Yeah.
Like right now, places like California, Washington is been legalized,
Hmm.
or recreationally,
Right.
but there's so many hurdles and so many taxes. It still is lucrative to go for your legal dealer
Right. So what I would
because the government's
meddling.
got its hard on for tax money.
So I guess the question I'd ask you is if it was decriminalized, as in wasn't legalized but decriminalized, which is what you said is like it's open sale, no regulation, specifically marijuana. Would the price of an ounce of weed go up or down? Now, I mean, you could make an argument either way. I would make an argument that probably if it was decriminalized, then maybe the price of weed would go up because then everybody and their mom want to sell it, or everybody and their mom would want to use it. I'm sorry, and so the demand for it would go up, even though the supply would go up. But now that it's decriminalized, like exponentially, you're looking at a lot more people that would try it and maybe I don't want to say get addicted to it, but get used to it, get dependent on it, kind of like tobacco or something of that nature.
I don't think the demand would go up that much. I mean, I think the prices might rise a little bit just in that initial first couple months before the growers have a chance to catch up. But you hear stories of these growers having this just overflow and not able to sell it because there's so much.
Mm,
And but people are still buying it illegally because
it's
it's
cheaper.
it's half the price.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know anybody in the business. I don't know exactly what they're doing, but I would absolutely suspect that half of those growers that are destroying those crops are turning around and just selling it illegally to
Mm,
recoup their losses.
yeah. That makes sense. Just and when you say selling it illegally, you just mean like selling it, not claiming it as a sale, therefore not paying taxes on it.
Well, I mean, but packaging, yeah, not whatever, bundling it up, selling it through their store. They're selling it to the guy down the street for, you know, whatever, $50 a pound, and that guy is then turning around and putting it in bags and selling to whoever.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, it's like those people in New York that sell like cigarettes out of a fucking pack because it's so fucking expensive. Yeah.
Well, no, a little different. It's just um, that's just if somebody just wants to buy a single cigarette, so they have a single cigarette, do it that way. You know,
And somehow
I'm
that
not
some
saying.
somehow that's illegal. I always find that baffling. Like if I'm a cop and I catch you on the streets like selling singles, selling loosies, it's a crime. But it's like that pack of cigarettes has already been taxed and paid for, and all I'm doing is selling a single cigarette to somebody, maybe recouping my losses. I don't know. Is it scalping? I don't know. I don't know what they get them on, but
It's freaking. We need to overhaul and elimination of a lot of our laws.
so did we touch on the ATF yet? Did we touch on the ATF's younger cousin? Was it the DEA? Yeah, you got something to say about them? What do we do with those
Just
guys?
defund them. It. I think. I mean, I could see the argument for like the DEA in the sense of like if stopping the illegal trafficking of the drugs because there's still going to be some. I don't, they could decriminalize marijuana tomorrow. I don't think they're going to decriminalize heroin. So they're still going to have people trying to smuggle that or cocaine or whatever. Um, but, I say like we take the DEA and we take the CIA and put them in a room together and let them fight it out because that's what the drug war really is.
Wait, what?
Are you telling me you don't know about all the different CIA? Don't make me have to. I'm gonna have to Google all the stuff and give you the list.
Oh no,
Um,
just give me a brief synopsis.
how
Obviously, the
the
CIA operates in other
black
countries.
black ops operations are often funded by like the whole one of the Iran Contra things were guns and stuff with for drugs that were turned around and it's all a fucking shell game. Just which alphabet company are you dealing with?
Right. So when it comes to drug enforcement, besides the DEA, you're talking CIA. There's no other. What about Homeland Security? Like, is that involved anywhere outside the U.S. as far as
I don't really think so.
and and the Border Patrol? I mean, like if the Border Patrol finds a bunch of drugs, are they calling this the DEA? Is that the DEA's lane? Once there's drugs, it's out of there, or you know what I mean? Like,
I have no idea what those companies, alphabet companies, do,
hmm.
and I think it's a waste of money because it's just a shell game.
So that was the as a segue into my other point about like making certain drugs legalized is like the danger of them. Once again, it boils down to like a safety thing, and I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Like, I did live in some bad spots growing up as a kid, like before I joined the service and I got, got out of that situation. But I knew people that were involved in like the heavy stuff and they would do like questionable things, right? But the guys that I worked with that were just, doing the green stuff, like, first of all, it didn't cost that much. Second of all, like the dependency, I don't think for that particular drug was there. I mean, they talked about it a lot, but it wasn't like they were, you know, stealing things. Uh they weren't prostituting themselves out. So I think the other concern for, decriminalizing or legalizing some of these drugs is like the secondary side effects of what could happen to the society. I mean, like if we were all reasonable human beings, right? If we all just fucking did to ourselves, we wouldn't need a fucking government for one, right? If we all just kept to ourselves and didn't infringe on each other's rights, but we're not. We're
Now we're
human.
getting it.
Yeah. So we kind of need a government, but how far do we legalize shit knowing that if people get really wrapped up in heroin, um and it starts causing like adverse situations where they lose employment or they spend too much money on the drug, then instead of throttling back, maybe they're breaking into your house, or maybe they're sucking dick on the street corner or something. Who knows what they're doing. And then of course some of those drugs involve needles, and then you're talking about other diseases and potentially another safety hazard for the American public.
So take a look.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of the reasons why we say defund all that stuff. Why are we over there? What's the real reason we're over there fighting in Afghanistan and so on? So again, it's all a shell game. It's all about big business. It's all about
Wait, can you pop that up again? I'm sorry. So after 2001, you had CIA, NATO, and ISEF control, and the production of opium went up quite a bit, especially considering in 2001, that was 9/11, Taliban was doing their thing, and then we invaded subsequently thereafter, right?
oh they when we invaded, was it about protecting the people, the terrorism, things like that? And then go down the conspiracies about 9/11, which I don't believe all of them. Um, I am beginning more and more to believe that the government knew and didn't do it, but I don't think they're behind it necessarily.
Right. I think you told me that before. Like they knew that something was going to happen. They just didn't do anything.
Right.
That was your take on it. Hmm. So what would be the point of increasing, like, what's the point of letting the opium production increase over there? I mean, like, what does that do?
Money, because they're bringing it into the United States.
But it's
And
illegal, so it's going to get confiscated, right? No?
so if like the CIA
Mm.
is involved with bringing drugs into the country, turning around and selling it, or not selling it themselves, but to the big dealers, and they get their money that they can then use to fund their shenanigans
Mm.
without it going on the books and having to go through Congress and so on and so forth.
Hmm. Right. And that's specifically opiates, though. But what about what I said earlier? What do you think of like the side effects of because like I said, I'm behind letting people use marijuana. And it just that's like people abusing alcohol to me. It really is. But when we're talking about like heroin or we're talking about like meth, and obviously you know, there's gonna be a legal or not legal a subsequent increase in hospitalization because more people are going to be trying it out. But more importantly, like, what about the people that get super addicted and they lose their job and they don't have money and they need to feed their addiction? Like, you don't see any of that fallout happening if we legalize, a lot of these drugs.
I don't think by decriminalizing the drugs, I don't think they're going to see any more of that than we already currently have.
So if
There
you
might
go ahead.
there might be like an initial little spike where you have a bunch of people just running out and but typically the people who want to do that are already doing that.
So then, what's the end goal? As in, like, if you decriminalize it or you legalize it, and we go through that spike, do we see the drug abuse drop, or do we see a steady plateau, or do we see it slowly rise? Like, I mean, you open the floodgate of everything is okay. Use it at your own risk. Please don't stab or shoot your neighbor, or exchange needles or fuck people on street corners for money. Like, what do you think happens? Do you think we have more addicts in the country? Do we have less addicts? Do we have?
No, I think it's not going to change anything except the government's not getting their cut.
Mm-hmm.
The government's not getting their cut. There's going to be less people in prisons, um, and so on. If I choose to do drugs, that's my choice. There's no other person. I'm not harming anybody else. But with the way the law is, if I do heroin or whatever, I can be thrown in jail. Or if I was in California and was smoking pot, I could be thrown in jail by Kamala Harris back in the day.
Mm.
But the point, and who are you harming?
I
So
honestly, I'm the worst person to ask that question because I don't know. Like, I guess if you started abusing drugs tomorrow, you know who you hurt? You hurt me because I love you.
I love you too, big guy, but that's beside the point.
But if I see you
You
come
could
on,
still love me if I do drugs.
I know, but you hurt me. I'm not gonna stop loving you, but like maybe seeing you missing some teeth, or maybe seeing like you sleep deprived after like a week, seeing you run down, like like you hurt a lot of family members and friends, I guess. But I mean, I don't know. That's based on the assumption, excuse me, that if you make something legal or you decriminalize it, that more people are going to try it. Which I don't know. I
Or
guess
so you got if they try whether they try if they try it or if they abuse it. Those are two drastically different things. Someone can try marijuana, eh,
mm,
yeah, I can see doing this on the weekends, or yeah, I can see doing this every once in a while when I go to a concert. That's one thing. Abusing it could be, oh my God, I got to get up and I smoke pot, and then I go to school and I smoke more pot, and you know,
I know people like that. So based off of what you said, that's basically you're describing somebody using smoking cigarettes or tobacco or something like that. That's
exactly.
you know yeah. Oh, I gotta calm my nerves. And I guess the most recent example I could have of that is I used to play video games with this guy, and he wasn't particularly good, but he just we'd have good conversation, and he'd tell me my country sucks, my president sucks, and I'd be like, well, your prime minister sucks, and whatever. But then he started using more and more marijuana, which whatever, man, you do what you do. But he would get legit stoned before he got online, and he was trash. And so we tried to have like an intervention with him. We were like, hey man, we don't care what you do if you want to smoke weed, but can you just like not smoke so much before you get online and play video games with us, because we're counting on you as a teammate, to like be somewhat sober. Well, it calms my nerves, it helps me and actually recorded a game with him. It's somewhere in the archives, but it was just like 3 games in a row, and I just was like, oh, you know what, I got some chores I got to do, and it became a point of contention, and eventually we just didn't play with the guy anymore. But uh, Yeah, I mean, I feel like anybody can abuse anything. What about steroids? We didn't actually talk about steroids. Let's talk about the hard drugs. What do you think about steroids? What do you think about baseball players and football players and Olympic athletes? What do you think about people juicing? What's your take on that?
Care.
You don't care.
No, I
So,
mean, if they want, little shriveled up testicles, more power to them.
hmm,
Put an asterisk by their record and move on.
should there be an asterisk though?
If the record keepers want to distinguish the difference, then sure.
Mm. But at the same time, like, do you feel like let's say you're starting off in high school and you're playing a sport,
Who does
and
it harm?
the people that want to participate in the sport, because if you want to be a baseball player, you want to make
You're
it big.
talking about you're talking about steroids in competition, then, not somebody who's
Not
lifting
no,
wanting to do
not
steroids or
recreational,
doing
not
steroids.
recreational, like because we're talking about legalizing drugs or decriminalizing across the board. So now, if we're talking about competitive, people
Oh,
playing.
competitive groups can still have their own rules
Mm-hmm.
about whether or not they're going to let competitors in that are using steroids or whatever.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Solid point there. So,
So if I want to just play baseball with my buddies and hit like Mark McGuire
mhm.
or whatever, and isn't he was he one of the ones who got caught doing steroids? I don't know. I don't want to
uh,
say anything.
McGuire, Sosa, Bonds, Palmero,
Oh, I thought Bonds was like the
Canseco.
cork guy.
No, they were all juicing, dude. Like they were all
All right, well,
juicing.
whatever. One of those people, and I want to hit the ball like them, but I'm not going out to be for scholarships or anything like that. And I'm not doing anything competitively, so I'm not answering to any organization.
Hmm.
Who cares? Shrink your dick, do what you want.
So in that case, it's if you want to do it, on your own level, if you just want to improve your bench or you just want to crank them over the fence, and you decide that you want to go to college and play in the NCAA, or you want to play NFL, or you want to do something Olympic, that you should still be subjugated to the rules of that I don't know,
Organization, yeah.
organization. Yeah.
The organization have their own rules that you have to abide by,
Hmm.
like the NFL. If you want to play in the NFL, you can't do drugs, can't do steroids, can't all these things. Now you can do marijuana, I guess. I think they took that off their list with the last
That was my
player
next.
meeting.
That was my next question. Actually, that was like, what do you feel? Like, dude, marijuana. I mean, I'm not saying I smoke some marijuana, but I could definitely say I don't think marijuana is a performance enhancing drug. I don't think you.
Well, maybe with some of the video games, but if
I,
you don't smoke a lot,
if you don't
you
smoke
know,
a
when,
lot, sure, maybe.
so I mean, I don't care. And I don't care what those organizations do. If they want to say, "Hey, we're going to have this is our regular league, and then this is our hopped up on steroids league,"
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The hopped up on where players retire at fucking 35 because their joints are fucked up and they got organ issues. Um, nah, I actually now you put it in perspective, I think I agree with you. I guess you just make it legal, like something like that. I guess you could make legal, but then once again, you're talking about people, tying up their the medical system based on the fact that their organs are failing at an earlier age, or and then of course I don't know how, like, I've met like two people in my lifetime that I actually knew were on steroids. There's like this gym I go to, and there's like three people I didn't. I mean, you think they're on steroids, right? Because they're bigger than you, or they're stronger than you, or they're cutter. And it isn't until they tell
hacks,
you, what's that? Hacks?
hacks.
Yeah, it was one guy, right? He goes, real cool guy, and he usually smells like weed. Like he'll come in, and I see him, and he's a really good, really cool, chill guy, and he just has like some in-depth conversations. And it sucks that we always have him at the gym. It's like fucking 20 minutes gone. It's like, bro, like, hey man, we gotta. But like one day he came in, and I was like, dude, did you smoke again? I was like, you gotta, like, fucking wash up a bit, man. You walking around like a fucking weed bush. And he's like, hey man, where do you, he's like, oh, I forgot my pen at home. And I thought he meant pen, and he was actually talking about pin like a needle. And he goes, yeah, I usually pin myself right here. He's like, where do you pin yourself? And I was like, what do you mean pin myself? He's like, well, where do you inject yourself? I was like, I don't. And he's like, oh. And I was like, well, dude, you do what you want to do, man. I ain't gonna change my opinion of you. Like even though you do drugs, it's still you still have to diet, you still have to show up and lift, and you still have to rest. So it's not like you just take the drug and you don't fucking do anything. It's just that it amplifies your results. So I know guys that were on the juice, in my deployments, and obviously like that is probably the worst place to be. Like those dudes were fucking aggressive as shit. So I could see the problem with legalizing something like that, like for recreational use. And I knew dudes that took it, and they were just like, fucking whatever, man. I'm here to. They're fucking happy-go-lucky guys, you know. They seem like really not. I mean, I don't live with them. I don't know if they fucking go home and put holes through the wall, but I agree with you that something like that, like just leave it up to that organization if they want to participate in something on a competitive level. Yeah, agree, disagree. I agree.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I said.
Hmm. Um, and I guess as far as criminalization and decriminalization, or legalizing, and I think we're getting near the end of this episode, but I would like to say that I'm open to specific drugs. I don't know. I'm not the drug maker. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a chemist, but certain drugs I'm opening to, like what you say, decriminalization. I think marijuana should be one of them. Like just if you want to grow a squash plant in your backyard and then alternate it with weed and every other, like why the fuck not? I mean, can you do that with tobacco? Right? You can grow tobacco if you wanted to, right? You could grow it, dry it, grind it, smoke it. Yeah. I
I
mean,
think so.
I think so too, as long as you're not selling it, right? Uh,
Pretty much.
yeah. So, now that you talked about steroids, pretty much performance enhancing drugs, I get down with that take. I'm having a hard time like with the meth and the heroin kind of aspect. I guess I don't really. I think that like if that would be have to be heavily regulated just because of the amount of potential for abuse and the side effects thereafter of committing crime and tying up the healthcare system. Yeah, no, no, you just laissez faire, just whatever.
Dude, just
You,
capitalism.
dude,
Let it go.
you need to like just fucking save up a bunch of money and go buy a fucking island and then just island of Darien and then let me know how it goes, because if it goes pretty well, I will bring myself and my immediate family, meaning spouse and children, and we will live happily ever after. Hopefully, I don't know. I would be down to trying a lot of the things you say. I always think of like counter arguments, so it just kind of like
There's one big classification that we haven't talked about: hallucinogens. We only barely touched on that. And what? So this last election, Oregon decriminalized basically, and so people caught using drugs or overdosing aren't going to jail anymore. They're going to be going to like treatment programs, things like that,
mhm.
which is a much better model than we've seen. Um, but hallucinogens, there's been a lot of scientific study about the use of hallucinogens to, to combat depression, things like that. It's been a big thing in the tech world about microdosing, taking small amounts of hallucinogens to enhance their brains and things like that, nootropics and whatnot. So what's your take on those?
Man, I don't see why not. I really don't. Like, my biggest thing with any drug is initially, when you take the drug, how do you interact with somebody else immediately? So, like in the case where it was like, if you're drinking alcohol, if you're drinking or you're smoking marijuana or something, or you're taking edible, like versus like, you know, it's not going to affect, like, you drinking alcohol is not going to affect me. You smoking marijuana may affect me through smoke, just whatever the smoke itself. But like, so it doesn't affect me in that matter. And I guess if you took shrooms, I guess it wouldn't affect me, right? Um, but then again, the next thing comes like I said, like I think there's like a necessary amount of regulation as to like the dosage, like,
Why?
well, I'm just saying, like, when you buy a bottle of whiskey, like, that bottle of whiskey has
So
it has that amount of alcohol. So I know, I mean, I could still fucking drink till I pass out. But generally speaking, I buy that bottle of wine, I buy that beer, I can kind of judge how long it's going to take me to where I'm going to go. But if you make like some super awesome, you know, mushroom, you figure out a way to like concentrate the, what is it, the neurotropics? Is that what you said, or something of that nature?
psilocybin in the mushrooms.
Okay, yeah, that terms. But if you figure out a way, and like normally I take like two, and I take two of those, like, I don't know what's the outcome of taking too much, hallucinogen. Do I die? Do I get, do I suffer some permanent damage somewhere? But dude, I'm all for the research. Like, fuck yeah, dude. Like, there's a lot of shit out there that.
What about personal responsibility? If I'm trying a new drug,
Mm-hmm,
all drugs are suddenly decriminalized, and I decide I'm going to try this new drug,
mm-hmm,
and I just immediately go in there and grab a handful of mushrooms and eat them.
mm-hmm. Whoa, Jesus Christ. I
I
mean,
make a fucking mushroom pizza and just wolf that whole fucking thing down. Isn't that my responsibility to understand what I'm putting in my body?
it is, but it isn't. I mean, and I say that because I mean, remember, for the longest time, like when we talk about what you're putting in your body, like I said, like that's, there has to be. I mean, we used milk as an example, but let's go off the nutrition label of something. So people didn't know how much sugar or how much fat or how many carbs or proteins they're putting in their body. So essentially, if you don't know the content of what you're consuming, essentially you're killing yourself, but a lot more slowly. Now you have diabetes, and you're like, well, how the fuck did I get here? Or all of a sudden you have heart disease, and you're like, well, how did I get here? Well, there was no government oversight on essentially the consumption. So like, you can be somewhat informed. Like, yes, we're all responsible, but what makes us more responsible is being informed. So if we are informed, we can essentially look at a can of Dr. Pepper and be like, oh shit, this has 46 grams of sugar, and my doctor said I need to cut down on my sugar because I weigh too much, or I could
Well,
be.
that's part of the thing about deregulation and stuff. So if I've got these pot plants growing out in the yard and mushrooms springing up in the lawn,
Hmm.
and I go out there, or whatever, you can go out in Washington. I remember my high school girlfriend told me how the psilocybin mushrooms would just grow wild by where she lived,
Hmm.
just in their yard, just off on the trails when they go hiking, stuff like that, everywhere. So I just go wandering out and pick a mushroom and eat it without knowing what I'm doing. That's kind of on me. Whether it's a poisonous mushroom that's going to kill me,
Hmm.
or a hallucinogenic mushroom, or a tasty moral mushroom or something.
No, no, and I agree with you, but at the same time, it was illegal. So what you were doing was you were basically assuming
No, picking
response.
mushrooms isn't illegal,
Well, you took them though, didn't you?
huh?
So
No, I'm giving you an example. So, but going out and picking and eating mushrooms is not, wild mushrooms is not illegal. So, if in my ignorance,
I get what you're saying. So yeah, go ahead.
if in my ignorance I pick a hallucinogenic mushroom and eat it,
Hmm.
that's on me. So now
Yeah.
let's say everything's decriminalized. So even the hallucinogenic mushrooms are legal.
No. Yeah. So this is
So
this.
then people going out, if I decide, okay, well, I'm going to grow these hallucinogenic mushrooms for
Hmm.
people, I'll say, okay, these are hallucinogenic mushrooms. If you eat them, you're going to start tripping. And
So how about this? How about, like, what if I would say, because I think if I phrase it differently, like, if the government couldn't tax you on it, but they could at least there had to be some kind of measurement to, or there had to be some kind of nutrition content label so that, people know what they're putting in there. At the end of the day, you are responsible, but the more informed you are, like the better, the easier it is for you to make a decision. Like, I'm gonna take.
I could reluctantly agree with that sort of thing if it's only for like the processed versions of it. So like if you take uh, the marijuana and do the extracts and things like that,
Mhm.
I could kind of see the argument for that. Although I still disagree. I think the government should just go away in
Here's
general.
here's what I think. I think if you were if you were growing shrooms in your backyard and I came over to your house and you're like, yeah, have some shrooms. Like, it's on me to find. I like, oh well, like, how strong are these? And you'd be like, well, have you ever taken them before? How much do you weigh? I just take like half of one. They're pretty strong. But if you're selling them, if they're on an open market and anybody can buy them, like, people should know what the concentration of the product is. It's like
You
it's
can't, but every single one would vary. It would
I
be impossible.
it would, but at the same time, like, that is only because, remember, that's only because we're at a point where the science, or the lack of science, depending how you look at it, is not as far there as established. Like, when you compare it to like the basic drug that everybody abuses and everybody uses, which is ethanol, which is alcohol. Like, we have had alcohol, play a role in our country ever since the 1600s, and it's been regulated ever since the 1800s. So we know at this point, when you make alcohol, like, okay, if I put in this much corn and I distill it with this, and I, add this barley and I do this, okay, all right, I'm gonna redistill it again, and I'm gonna distill it again. So I'm gonna triple distill it. Okay, here, boom, and I'm gonna put it in a cask, and at cask strength, I'm looking at about, I don't know, 50% alcohol per volume. And then after 12 years, because like I said, there's decades of history, centuries of history, now I'm looking at 60%, and maybe I will dilute it with water. And at this point, I can get it down to 45% proof. And then you could slap it on a bottle and you could sell it, and you say this is 45% proof. That has a lot more science to it. Whereas, like, when you're, starting up your shroom business, obviously you're going to have to do some note taking. You're going to have to do some analytic. Okay, well, if I take a cow and this cow eats
But,
primarily, what I'm saying is, like, there
but
has
why
to,
not?
what's up?
But why not just let the people who buy it? If I want to buy mushrooms to hallucinate,
Mm-hmm.
I'll can get one. I can take a little bit, see how it goes. Take a little bit more, see how it goes, and so on. Same with marijuana. If I get some weed and want to smoke it, I smoke a little bit, see how it goes. Smoke a little more, see how it goes. Personal fucking responsibility, and that's what the problem is. We don't have that in this country. The daddy government has to check everything and make sure everything's okay and tell us what we're supposed to do. No, fuck that. Go grow your own weed and smoke it and decide how if you like it or not.
No, dude, I totally agree with that. I feel like, at this point, like, a lot of the shit that we deal with is people, adults not being adults. McDonald's made me fat. No, you made yourself fat. You know,
Because they're too lazy to go to the store and get healthy food and cook it.
yeah.
Instead, they stopped at McDonald's on the way home and ate that really tasty double quarter pounder with cheese, add bacon.
Mm,
But
mm.
it's McDonald's fault because their prices are so good or so convenient. Well, whatever. Yeah, you're right. I mean,
And
and
I feel like at least, because not everybody. I mean, eh, gosh, how do I? Everything is regulated to some extent. Anything that is consumed by a human being, like, if we're talking about buying shit for your car, it's obviously not as regulated. Like,
should it be?
should it be? I think if it has the potential to end up inside your body, there should be some kind of research to show. Because the thing is, like, not everybody. I mean, I do I want to baby people? No, but I want people to be informed. I really do. I feel like if you're gonna grow shrooms in your backyard, I don't think the government should have shit to do with that. I really don't. If you want to grow shrooms, you want to invite people over, you want to have a shroom party, you want to have a weed party, that's on you. You want to grow a cocoa tree in your back, or a cacao tree, whatever, and fucking, you would do lines on your table. That's on anybody that comes to your house. But
that's where you get chocolate, not cocaine.
which one is which? Is it cocoa tree for cocaine or a cacao tree for cocaine?
It's coca leaf, which
Coke.
is I think is a plant.
Well, I thought it was a tree, dude. I mean, you're probably right. A cacao tree is probably chocolate, and then coca is probably cocaine. You're probably right. You're usually right about stuff like that for some reason. Not like you have any
Yeah,
experience.
it's more like a looks more like a bush.
Hmm. But my point is like if I come over to your house and you fucking you make a badass lasagna dish, I don't expect you to provide me with a nutrition label as to what is in the lasagna. That is personal. Like, ooh man, that shit looks good, but goddamn, that's a lot of cheese. That's a lot of damn, dude. You put pork sausage in there too. You know what I mean? But when it comes to selling something on an open market where consumers make a decision, like I mean, part of it is what's going in my body, and then part of it is also making a good consumer decision. If we were talking about pussy beers earlier, if there's that 3.5% alcohol, and I buy 30 packets this much, but then I could fucking buy this 5.5% alcohol fucking beer for an 18 pack for this much, you know maybe I'm that technical guy where I'm like, okay, what's going to give me the most alcohol per dollar? What's going to get me fucked up quicker? Is the full gravity beer a better bargain than the Coors Light? So I feel like on top of the fact that we're talking about potency, which I understand at this point in the infancy of decriminalizing or legalizing anything, it's in its infancy, but there is science, and at some point you will get there to where you could say this marijuana is rated X amount per ounce, or this shroom is X amount of PSBs, whatever the fucking standard unit of measure is. But I feel like as an informed consumer, you should know not only for your health, but also to decide what is the better deal, what is the better. Am I going to buy from you, or I'm gonna? But again, if I go to your house, it's just a decision I make. I'm not
But
paying for it.
if I just want to say these are my backyard grown mushrooms, 2 count,
Mm-hmm.
or by weight,
Mm-hmm.
1 gram.
So I guess here's the next question. So if you're allowed to sell them on the open market and there's no regulation, and then somebody, and I'm asking you this, if somebody takes them and then for some reason either overdoses or suffers some kind of condition, you know, are they allowed to go and sue you for it? Should they be? And,
No,
and
not if if they're taking something to hallucinate. Like if I sold them mushroom, like if I told them these were like moral mushrooms or something like that, and then they took them and had hallucinations. Yes. If I sold them poisonous mushrooms instead of the hallucinogenic ones, yes. But if I'm saying these are hallucinogenic mushrooms, take them at your own risk. Give me $5.
mm, and you don't think that should be regulated at all, so we know which are poisonous and which are hallucinogenic? Because that's kind of borderline on what we were talking about earlier, which is like when people cut the weed or cut the cocaine with something else to increase the volume. Like I,
Yeah, it's up to the consumers, and if the person, if with deregulation, you're going to be more honest with your consumers because there's plenty of competition.
mm, I guess
You're going
if
to have to be.
I guess if you,
Because if they don't like my mushrooms, if I've been selling moral mushrooms instead of the psilocybins, then Johnny's going to go next to the booth next door and buy from the other guy selling psilocybin mushrooms,
mm,
or if they or weed or whatever it is. If I sell garbage, they go somewhere else.
yeah, assuming that you're a good person. Like if you're a bad person just trying to make a quick buck, you could sell garbage and probably kill somebody though. I mean, and should that person face a murder charge? I don't know.
Absolutely,
Why? I don't know. We're not regulating it. Like
but
we made it legal, and
there's still a violation of contract.
how is it a violation of contract? It's decriminalized. So essentially, it's like,
Right?
uh,
So the contract is I am giving you psilocybin mushrooms in exchange for $5, and you give me the $5, I give you this bag. If I lied and did not give you the psilocybin mushrooms and gave you poisonous ones or food grade ones or whatever,
Well, if it's food grade,
th-
then sure. But if the guy's dead, he's dead, and that's a result of somebody just trying to make a quick buck, and that guy probably doesn't care about a long lasting business or business model or a name. He's just trying to get a quick profit. Like as a consumer.
and those are the same people who are taking like the vape cartridges, cutting them with vitamin E oil,
Hmm.
and turning around and selling them
Right.
and killing people,
Right.
or giving them permanent lung damage or whatever.
Getting them that, yeah, but there was no regulation on that though, right? Like because the vape market blew up.
There was regulation. There was regulation on that in California, Washington, places like that.
That what was the regulation specifically? Was it
I
did
don't know. They go through their weed processes and
mm,
all the hurdles they have to go through. But it was just the black market. So there wasn't on those specific cartridges. There was no regulation because that was the black market because it was cheaper.
mm, yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying, but as far as like the original topic, as far dude, I think there's a potential for a lot of medical breakthroughs or recreational use for a lot of drugs. I just worry about like the drugs that have like severe adverse consequences, as in like permanent damage, death, and causing you to just take up a life of criminality to support your habit. So, but yeah, dude. I mean, I
No drug would cause someone to become a criminal to support their habit. A drug is purely a tool, just like alcohol.
mm,
If somebody becomes a criminal to support their habit, that's their responsibility. It is not the fault of the drug, of the alcohol, of whatever.
mm,
It's the person,
mm-hmm,
and that's the problem. We haven't, as a society, we're not looking at people as individuals. We're a collective community, and we have to take care of our collective community. So it's obviously the fault of the drugs. No, it's not the fault of the drugs. It's the fucking individual. And
mm-hmm,
people need to be responsible for themselves.
mm. Yeah. So let's assume that they're not, because obviously, this is 2020, and you see a lot of people not being responsible for themselves. We legalize some stuff, and they just go around breaking into people's houses and cars. Mm. As a result,
This is 2020. They do that anyway.
I think it would increase though. I really, I don't think, I don't think you could look at the situation of just like making it completely legal, because or decriminalizing it completely, and honestly say that like not much would change. Like you did say there would be an initial spike in use, right? And I think there would be a spike in use, but I think
There'd
that's
be a spike in use of people trying it who who had previously only not done it because it's illegal.
right. Yeah.
But when I say initial spike, I don't mean like a you know 1 year big giant thing. I think like in those first couple months there'd be an increase in use. The surplus would be used up, and they would stabilize.
Yeah, I don't know. I just I could make an argument for I could make an argument for shrooms. I guess I could make an argument for weed. I totally could. Like let's do it. Why are we here?
Anything naturally occurring, I would argue for that. The ones that are processed, I could see the argument. I wouldn't like, but I could see the argument for the regulation and testing and labels and shit like that. So like the
Mm.
weed extracts, the processed cocaine.
The
If we're getting
heroin's
processed
process,
cocaine, I
right?
want to make sure the CIA is putting the exact contents down on their labels. Um, you know, I don't know what other ones, but
What about prescription drugs? I don't think we really touched on prescription drugs too much. We just talked about like what about like oxycodone or Tylenol threes or OxyContin? morphine. What do you think about those drugs? Should we should I be able to get a prescription for my knee pain and sell it to somebody, or or should that be illegal? Can I sell drugs to people that I have a prescription for? I mean,
Well, the prescription. I
it's
mean,
regulated, right?
under current law, obviously it's illegal because the prescription's for you, not for them.
Mm-hmm.
But and those are controlled substances and just mere possession of a controlled substance, yada yada. Um, I think that if we decriminalize a lot of the other stuff, we'd see a lot of that use go down
Mm.
because why go through the hassle of getting a prescription for what oxy when you can get something else for cheaper and whatnot, and it's not illegal like the kratom stuff. um I don't know much about it. I just know that it functions uh like it hits your receptors in a similar manner that the opiates do, and so it has a similar effect, but it's not addictive like that. So things like that. Although I believe that the kratom was quickly scheduled by the DEA.
Hmm.
Yeah, they I guess in 2016 the DEA, says they announced their intention to place the active materials in the kratom plant onto the Schedule One of Controlled Substance Acts. So
So I get a 6 month prescription for some surgery I just had, and the only reason it's illegal for me to sell it is because it's a prescription, not because it's a controlled substance, or both. And if we change any, should I be able to sell you, or I don't even think, I think it's illegal for me to give you a prescription med in general, yeah? I think that's illegal in itself. I couldn't even sell it to you, but so as far as prescription medications go, then that's just a no all around because they're prescriptions.
yeah, there's that, and it's just I think the I don't know. I really don't care about the prescription drugs. I think that they're overused
Because
and
I
that our society in general is over medicated. Um,
those are the most
and
abused, yeah. I think by statistics, I think prescription drugs are more abused than any illicit drugs out there, like cocaine or heroin. Just because I think the fact that they are a prescription, they bypass the whole everything. They end up at somebody's house or in somebody's pocket because they legally obtain them, and now they're just you know executing parlay after parlay. I think in some I remember watching, there was a special on HBO, it was a documentary. Is these people out in the country, and it was like a whole family of drug addicts. It was pretty sad. I think it was in Arkansas, dude. And like they were selling oxycontins for like $20 a pill. So you just keep going in, you complain about your back pain, and then you get your shit, and then you get another bottle of like 30, and what's 30 times 20? A lot of money, dude. A lot of money. Uh, so prescription meds should remain prescription meds. Like,
yeah,
do we?
the thing is there's always going to be a black market. But it looks like kratom currently is not scheduled under the Controlled Substances Act.
Mm,
They're looking at it. Um, I think FDA is cracking down on it if people are selling it as supplements. But I mean things like that. Those are things that compete with big pharma and their money. So obviously, there's a push to get things banned because it could,
mm-hmm.
it's competition.
Right. Yeah, I could see that. obviously, there's the potential to sell anything. I guess you could sell cancer medicine that's a prescription, or you could sell HIV medication, or which I don't know. I don't know why people would. I don't know. Maybe their insurance doesn't cover it. Who knows? But that's not for me to decide. I think we just about summed up everything. Was there anything else that you wanted to cover in particular?
Nothing in particular.
Hmm. So with that being said, I guess I will let you have the final word, big boy.
I'm going to close with another Bill Hicks quote. There are essentially only two drugs that Western civilization tolerates: caffeine from Monday to Friday to energize you enough to make you a productive member of society, and alcohol from Friday to Monday to keep you too stupid to figure out the prison that you're living in.
What about nicotine, man? Nicotine wasn't in there.
Yeah,
Oh,
those are the main. Well, this is the ones that Western civilization tolerates.
right.
You know, come on, man. Try smoking a cigarette down the street in California.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, shit. Thank you for tuning in to the show. Don't forget to go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe. Go ahead and share the channel. If you got some friends that looking for some alternative content, some people that are very personable, small base, looking to answer your questions, perhaps get you on the show, pick your brain, hear your voice, share your opinion. Ha 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 ha. Yeah,
I congratulate them. They won.
yeah, they did. I mean, they always win, right? It's like the Matrix. It's like Agent Smith. You won. You were always going to win. It was inevitable. But yeah, with that being said, I'm Jake,
I'm Drake.
and this is Jake and Drake show, and we'll see you guys next Sunday. Topic to be determined. Later, later.